a little message that says it's okay to record just so that you know. Hopefully you're here for the right reasons. We're here to talk a little bit about the different roles that volunteers can play in the Wyoming 4-H program. Hopefully, for those of you who it looks like we have lots of people that are already club volunteers or club leaders or working as project volunteers in your county. Hopefully this will help you to help recruit new people and maybe think about other things you could do within your role, and also some food for thought kind of questions you may not have thought about as a 4-H leader. So let's get started. And feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself and feel free to ask questions at any point in time. So for tonight's agenda, the first thing we're going to do is introduce the topic of being a volunteer. Then we'll talk a little bit about how we build confidence. Oh, you know what? This is a slide that accidentally in there. So let's ignore that one and let's keep going. Sorry, I was like, I don't know what this is. Okay. Anyways, so as a 4-H leader, we often, when you go to get a job, you have to go through a job interview. Well, being a 4-H leader is kind of like a job. However, our problem is, guess what? We don't have a job interview. We don't spend time talking to you about what your interests are or what kind of things you can do to meet the needs of the volunteer program. We do a really not great job helping you realize what you can do as far as 4-H and what your skill sets match up within our 4-H program. So part of this hopefully will help you to think about that, and it'll be kind of like a job interview. The other thing that happens during a job interview is you have the opportunity to ask questions to the people that are interviewing you. You get to ask more about what their organization is, what kind of things they might be looking for, how you would fit into the organization. And we also don't do a great job doing that. We don't spend time talking to you about how you fit into our organization or give the opportunity to ask us how you fit in. So as you think about becoming a volunteer or changing your volunteer role or doing something different, here's some things I think you should consider. What skills do you think you have that would benefit the 4-H program? And then, do you really need to have skills to be a volunteer? Most of us think that in order to be a robotics volunteer or in order to be an aerospace volunteer or a foods volunteer, we have to have skills or know the things that we're going to do. This really isn't true. You can think beyond those project-based skills, and there are lots of things that you can do no matter who you are to be a volunteer in our program. You can volunteer just because you want to help others, no matter what that looks like. You may just want to spend time with your kids. So if your kids are engaged in robotics, maybe you want to become a robotics leader because you want to spend time with them. Maybe you want to learn something too. Maybe you want to become a woodworking leader because you want to learn how to make some furniture or some shelves or something for your house. Maybe you're really good at being an organizer, and that's a skill set you can share as a volunteer, maybe as a club leader or an assistant leader to a project leader in order to help them stay on top of things and organized. Maybe you're just willing to learn, and that would make you a great volunteer no matter what the project is also. Or maybe you're a good listener. One of the things that we really talk about in the 4-H program is that we look for opportunities to provide our young people with healthy relationships with adults. So if you're a good listener, you might be able to serve as one of those caring adults to a young person and allow them to talk to you about things that are happening in their life that they're maybe not willing to talk to their parents about. So let's talk about what is your motivation for becoming a volunteer? Why do you want to volunteer with the 4-H program? And think about that, and that's a question that you can ask yourself, and also a question that you can ask your 4-H educator in order to make sure that your motivation is in line with the role that you're playing within the 4-H program. Also think what questions you have for 4-H. I may be able to answer some of those questions today, but you'll also want to think about 4-H as your employer. What do you want to know about their business or the things that they're doing? So being a 4-H volunteer is not about teaching kids how to show a lamb in this case. It's really about using that lamb to teach kids about life. And so really think about the fact that you do not have to know everything about showing sheep to be the sheep leader. If you are excited to help kids and you're excited to engage in a new skill and you're willing to learn and you're willing to ask questions, even you could be the sheep leader and teach kids how to face life's challenges using whatever project, sheep, beef, woodworking, shooting sports it is, that will help kids learn about life and life skills. So let's talk a little bit specifically about what roles there currently are within the Wyoming 4-H program. So currently we offer opportunities to be a project volunteer, which means you're going to lead a project, a club volunteer, which means you're willing to lead a club. You could also be an activity volunteer, and we'll talk a little about what that looks like here in a bit. You might be a chaperone where you spend the night with kids at an overnight event. You could be a coach or a committee member. So we're going to take a little time to dive into what each one of those roles are, and then think about how maybe you can fit that role, or maybe you know a spouse or a neighbor that would serve great in that role. So first, we're going to look at what a project volunteer does. Obviously, their purpose is to help youth develop skills around a specific project. We talked about some of those already tonight, and most of your kids are involved in some type of project. And so maybe you're the person who could help them. Once again, remember that you don't have to know everything about that project. We can give you tools and resources to help you learn more and be able to ask other people for help. If you're a project volunteer, how would you measure success? First, you would measure success if your kids are developing project and life skills through the work you're doing. So for instance, if you're a sewing leader and your kids learn how to make a skirt, that would be some success. If they learn patience because they have to rip a seam out 3 times, that's a life skill. That would also be a success. They don't necessarily have to be great or excel at anything. Your goal is just to help them learn the project and life skills that comes along with whatever project you're willing to lead. Also, if a member can learn to communicate, maybe they talk to other people about the project that they're doing, or they're able to share their learning with other kids within their project and help them in addition to learning a skill. You'd also be successful if family members receive communication about ways to participate. If you're a sewing leader, you'd want to tell them about the county fashion review contest or the state fashion review contest. You might want to tell them about a tour you're going to take of Joann Fabrics when you head to Casper at some point in time, or Hobby Lobby. What are the specific job duties that come with being a 4-H project volunteer? First of all, you're going to start by helping members establish learning goals. And actually, these serve as a great guide for you to be able to plan your meetings. So if a member says their goal is that they want to learn how to sew a pillow, know that maybe that's one of the things you're going to focus on in your project meetings. Maybe their learning goal is to learn how to put a zipper in. And so that may be something you're going to focus on during your learning goals. And you may say, I have no clue how to put a zipper in, but I guarantee you there's a nice lady in your community who has put a zipper in before, and she's probably willing to come help you put that zipper in with your young person if you just ask her. If you serve as the project leader, then another person can come in without being a certified volunteer, and they can assist and help you through some of the things that you don't necessarily understand how to do. Or maybe you spend some time the week before putting a zipper in yourself so that you've seen how it happens, maybe using our curriculum or some videos that you might find online. You also are going to plan and prepare project meetings to teach project skills and meet goals. In addition to the things I mentioned about how you can teach those project skills and meet goals, we do provide curriculum for every single project that's offered in Wyoming that can walk you through the basic skills that you need to teach a project. And a lot of them are actually built around lesson plans. So they'll tell you in meeting 1, you're going to learn definitions of different sewing terms. In meeting 2, you're going to learn about your machine, and it'll go through and have you teach those skills to young people in a very sequential way. If you are a project leader, you also need to be able to communicate with your members. So those are some of the specific duties that you would need to do as a project leader and how you would measure success. As a project leader, you probably are going to commit 6 to 10 hours of your time monthly to the project. And it depends on the project if you'll meet every single month, or maybe you're just going to meet March through August because you're a swine volunteer and that's when all the kids are getting their pigs. So the commitment level is going to really depend on which project you're leading and how many kids are enrolled in that project group. Okay, next we're going to look at what it might take to be a club volunteer. So what is your purpose? It's to provide leadership to a 4-H club. If you want to measure success, if your club sets and meets goals, that would measure success. Also, if your family members receive communication about 4-H activities at all levels. It's kind of a theme here. We had the goals last time and also the communication. And then also part of our program talks about the fact that we're led by youth. So if you're a club leader, you need to make sure that youth leadership is what's leading your club meetings, not the bunch of adults making decisions. And of course, that members are having fun and they're engaged within your program. So what are your specific job duties? Your club should meet regularly, engaging in education, recreation, and business at each monthly meeting. And what regular means is usually monthly. It shows that if youth have experiences that are at least 6 hours or sequential in length, they're likely to be more beneficial to them. So we suggest that your club meets a minimum of 6 hours a year. And most clubs tend to usually meet monthly from October until the summer. Sometimes they take the summers off and then they may meet again in August and September. You also need to maintain a relationship with the extension office or your 4-H youth educator, depending on if you have one in your county. I think we are at full staff, so everybody should have one in their county. And they're going to work with you to help disseminate the information that they get into their office to your 4-H members. That may be through a newsletter. Maybe you have a mailbox at the office. Maybe they send you emails. Maybe you call them to ask them questions. But you want to have a pretty decent relationship with either your office staff member or your 4-H educator, or both. And you also want to work to recruit leaders to help and members to join. So this might be you are not great at finances. So maybe as a club volunteer, you would recruit somebody to help your treasurer with finances and to help you with the audit at the end of the year. You also want to provide opportunities for members to bring friends or for other members to join if your club isn't at full capacity. This is probably our largest time commitment. It's usually going to be 10 to 15 hours a month because you're planning meetings and trying to recruit new people to engage. Once again, this is going to depend on your club size, and it's also going to depend on if you have a support system, like additional leaders or additional parents to help you with some of the tasks that may be more cumbersome or take extra time. So a lot of you are club volunteers. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I would highly suggest that you work to add additional leadership to your club leadership team. If you need ideas on how to do that, feel free to reach out. I would love to help you think about club structure and things that you might be willing to delegate to other volunteers in your 4-H club. And I think the other thing to remember is that you can delegate some of the responsibilities to parents if they don't want to get certified as a 4-H volunteer right away. You're more than welcome to ask them to serve in roles of leadership in your club as long as they're not serving alone. That means that you or another certified leader are there when their experiences are happening, they're not meeting alone. However, that's a gateway for them to be able to engage in the 4-H program and see that being a volunteer may not be as scary or as much of a time commitment as they thought it would be. And it really will help to relieve some of those things that may be dragging you down or maybe making you frustrated because you're spending so much time engaging as a volunteer in 4-H. Or you might want to do other things after this presentation and really think about becoming a project leader, and giving up some of the duties you have as a club leader may allow you to do that also. All right, now we're going to look at the duties of an activity volunteer. So this is one that sometimes can be very confusing to people when you sign up. What the heck is an activity volunteer? Well, the purpose of this person is to assist members in community service, recreation, fundraising, transportation, or other 4-H related events. So this is where, if you're a 4-H club volunteer, you may want to ask for lots of activity volunteers to help you. They're going to help with a specific activity that's not a project. So if you want someone to lead your community service efforts, you would get an activity volunteer that's in charge of community service. If you want someone to help either plan recreation or work with your recreation officer to plan recreation, you would get an activity volunteer. If you're not into fundraising or you're not into handling money, then you find an activity volunteer that would want to do that. A lot of times we have to drive kids around, and we require all of our volunteers who drive youth to and from events to be certified. So activity volunteer might be just the person that drives a kid from one place to another. So you can see these are very specific to one activity that happens once in the year, or that happens throughout the year, but it's a very specific task that they're taking on. Other 4-H activity volunteers may be in charge of your 4-H carnival at your county, or maybe they are going to help with a specific community event that you're having that you were asked to have by someone in the community. So the measure of success and the job duties are a little bit different here because we don't know specifically what that activity is that people are volunteering for. However, if people in your program feel supported in an activity and that activity is carried out by you, the volunteer, that's going to show success. So if community service happens and people are engaged, obviously that's your measure of success. Additionally, if families are participating, how many of us have gotten so frustrated because we plan this great community service project, but nobody shows up? Maybe it's the time, maybe it's our communication style, whatever it is. if families are participating, that means you're being successful. Additionally, what are your specific job duties? You need to provide guidance to a specific task or activity and help in planning that specific task or activity. You'll see here, it doesn't say that you have to plan it yourself. You're just the one who's going to be the organizational person that may engage other parents and volunteers and youth in planning those activities. And this is my favorite thing to write in any job description, right? Other duties as assigned. This kind of is a catch-all volunteer position that allows someone to get certified, but maybe they don't want to take on a lead role within their 4-H program, either their club or their county. So they may have just some little things that they're going to work on depending on what level they're willing to help at. This time commitment can be very small, less than an hour, all the way up to 15 hours or maybe even more, depending on what the activity is that you're willing to be in charge of. All right. The next volunteer role that we offer in the Wyoming 4-H program is a coach. And this doesn't mean that you're going to coach a soccer team, but you could coach a shooting sports team or a livestock judging team or maybe a food cook-off team. So the job of this person is provide leadership and education to youth interested in a specific judging opportunity or a specific subject area. We have lots of contests that happen at Showcase Showdown, our state event. We also have lots of shooting sports contests and other contests that happen. So if you're willing to work with a small group of kids on a specific competitive event, then you would be a coach. How do you measure success? It doesn't mean that youth are winning. That's not the success. This is success if youth are participating at either a local, regional, state, or even national event in a judging or with a shooting sports competition. They're informed about all the activities around the specific thing that you're coaching. Here we use judging as our thing that you're coaching. There's also opportunities to coach at other projects like shooting sports. So what are your specific duties? To coordinate local practices and opportunities to take youth to. So if it's judging, you may want to look at the 307 judging series. If it's shooting sports, you may want to look at NRA matches or other states that host matches that you might be able to do postal matches where you send them your results, or just a way for youth to practice maybe some of the different events that are happening at the next level of competition. Hopefully you might need to have an area of expertise in here, be willing to learn or be willing to bring people in that know more about some of the things that you're teaching. So you need to provide feedback to young people if maybe their reasons aren't going so well, or if they need to change their stance in shooting sports. And of course, you need to recruit new members. This is especially true of our judging opportunities. For many of them, you need to have teams of 2 to 5 in order to compete, like livestock skillathon and hippology. And so in order to make that happen in some counties, you may need to help recruit new members to make that happen. Your time commitment can be 10 plus hours, just depending on what that judging opportunity looks like. Some people might get really into livestock judging and travel with their team throughout Wyoming to participate in 307 judging series contests. That could be 10 hours a time that they do that. And some people may choose just to help locally to choose their team that will go to the national contest. So 10 hours is probably a very low estimate. Some people get very involved and may spend 20 to 30 hours a month working as a coach. But once again, you can determine your level of involvement, just making sure that those job duties are met. Then next we have a chaperone. So this one is probably the most straightforward one. The purpose of a chaperone is to provide overnight supervision to young people. This might be at a 4-H camp. Maybe you're bringing them to Showcase Showdown. You're going to a national 4-H event. But whatever it is, it usually involves the fact that you're sleeping in the same location, maybe not the same cabin or the same hotel room, because that's not allowed, but you're sleeping in the same location as the young person. So if we're going to measure success of a chaperone, they are going to have youth who have a positive experience. They're going to provide youth with a safe environment where they can feel comfortable to learn and grow. And then their specific job duties are, you need to take an additional chaperone training. Currently, our online one is broken, but if you choose to engage, you basically go through a PowerPoint at this point in time, and then you take a test that shows that you were paying attention or reading the PowerPoint, and it tells you some different nuances that happen as part of overnight experiences with young people. Of course, we want you to set a good example. This means you probably don't want to be playing pranks or doing silly things that you wouldn't really want young people to do. You need to problem solve often because you may have things that come up that don't come up in a normal 4-H experience or a traditional 4-H experience. And you also should know all the emergency procedures for the event. What happens if a young person gets hurt? Who's the one that takes them to the hospital? Who stays back and stays with kids? Where's the nearest first aid kit? Things like that. This time commitment is a little bit different because you're actually in an overnight experience. So if you're at camp, it may be 2 to 3 days. If you're chaperoning a national trip like National 4-H Congress, you may be gone for 7 to 8 days, just depending on what commitment level you're taking. All right. Our last volunteer role is being a committee member. So this means that you serve on a committee to help planning, implementing, evaluating different types of 4-H programs and activities. Some counties have very active committees and some counties don't have committees. Sometimes a committee might be called a 4-H council, or maybe it's called a livestock program committee. Whatever it is, it means basically that you get together with another group of people and together you plan, implement, and evaluate that program. Interesting enough, one of the great things about being a committee member is maybe that you have some restrictions in your volunteer service, or you don't necessarily want to be a full-blown volunteer. You could serve as a committee member as long as you're not handling money, because to handle money and make some of the bigger decisions, you would need to be screened as a volunteer. But a lot of times this might bring in people who don't have young people in the program or people who want to commit at a different level. So if you're successful, you'll complete the educational activity or event related to the committee's purpose. So if your committee is a horse committee, that would be the completion of maybe a 4-H show and educational events throughout the year. Sometimes the committee members plan an entire year of programming. You're also going to make sure that there's cooperation, so everybody's engaged. It's not just one person taking on that task. If it is one person taking on that task, at that point you become an activity volunteer and are no longer a committee member. Specific job duties would be to identify problems, needs, and concerns within whatever activity you are helping with. So if it's the 4-H council, it may be what problems, needs, and concerns there are for the entire 4-H county program. Then as a committee or a group, you make plans to address those concerns. You need to attend meetings and events if you're choosing to be part of the committee member. It doesn't really help to say you're a committee member and not show up to help with any of the things that are happening. And then you need to identify and help secure resources, usually monetary, sometimes in-kind donations for committee success. So if you're helping with the 4-H carnival, maybe it's your job to make sure that you have some door prizes to be able to raffle off during that carnival, or maybe you're organizing who's going to bring all the cakes in for your cakewalk. As a committee member, you also need to know when there's time to give leadership. If somebody needs help, that you step in during that activity or event to give leadership, or maybe you serve as the chairman of your committee. This time commitment can be different depending what the committee that you're engaged in. It could be 1 to 5 hours per month, usually at least 1 hour a month when you're having meetings, and then some extra time when maybe you're having educational or events related to that committee's purpose. Does anybody have any questions about the specific roles that we offer in the Wyoming 4-H program? When you enroll in Z Suites, you can go in and sign up to be these specific roles, and you can always choose more than one role if you want. So I also think it's important to remember, if you go online and look at any of these job descriptions, all of them say adhere to the Wyoming 4-H policy. So no matter what role you're playing in the 4-H program, you should be aware of the Wyoming 4-H policies. Those policies can be found on our website under current members and then policies. So if you haven't seen those, I would suggest reviewing them. But I'm going to highlight a couple of them that might be more specific to the roles that we talked about. So one thing is, if you're a chaperone, you have to be 21. And as I stated before, you have to take an extra training. And those are just rules that we have to adhere to that are put forth by the University of Wyoming. Also, if you're a certified volunteer, we need to have certified volunteers at each event. And we practice a 2-deep leadership, which means if you're a club leader, you should have at least one other leader at your 4-H club meetings in case something would happen. If you're an activity leader, there should be one additional person. They don't have to be helping with the activity. They just have to be there in case something would happen. So maybe you're a shooting sports leader and you're the only certified shooting sports leader in your county, and you're leading the pistol project, and you don't have anybody else who's certified in pistol. As long as you have another person there that is a certified volunteer, they don't even have to be certified in the in the specific project you're helping with. We just need to have an extra person there in case something would happen, that they could help to alleviate any situation and help to be the person that might take someone to the hospital, or might be the one that grabs the first aid kit, or helps to do something while you're working with a young person. We also practice a 1-to-10 ratio of youth to adults. So if you have a club of 30 kids, you really should have 3 certified leaders or certified volunteers at your meeting. We often find that this is a huge burden for some people because they can't get people to step up and volunteer. So a couple of things to remember is this is the ratio that we suggest. I wouldn't stop your 4-H club meeting just because you don't have 3 leaders available. I would really think about how to add leaders to your program and really talk to them about the role they'd play. A lot of people will volunteer to be a certified leader and be the person sitting in the background and being that 3-to-30 ratio, but you have to specifically ask them and explain to them that they won't have a really big role. Your goal isn't to give them a huge job. You just really need that extra person in order to make sure that all kids are served within the program. So just something to think about, because I know a lot of us don't really think about the 1-to-10 ratio of a youth to adult. So if you have a club of 100, you need 10 adults. So just think about that as you kind of look to see where you need to add people to your member. Someone asked if a committee member can be the third person. Of course they can, as long as they're a certified volunteer. So that means that they have gone through the background check and that they also have gone through the initial volunteer training, and then they do a new training every 5 years and a new background check every 5 years. So that's what it takes to be a certified volunteer. So in turn, anybody can serve that role, even if they're an activity volunteer committee member, anybody who has actually gone through the certification process. And if you're really struggling to get events and you have a really large club, you can talk to your 4-H educator about possibly doing a volunteer training at your club meeting. So that would mean maybe you provide an activity for all the young people and they come in and they spend an hour certifying every single parent in your club to do the training with them to get that done. Or even an opportunity is if you know you're going to have a large activity and you know that there's a way that you can entertain kids, I would be willing to come, or we can do a Zoom training for all of your volunteers similar to this, where they won't actually have to do it on their own. And sometimes that makes it a little bit easier for people to get certified as a volunteer also. There's lots of rules about money. So if you're handling money or you're asking somebody to be the money person, I would highly suggest you read through the policies about what you can and can't do. We have things like you have to have 2 signers on a check. You can only have so much money in your bank account. You can only have 1 debit card. If you take money out, it can't be taken out by the person that you're giving the money to. There's just about 7 or 8 pages about rules about money. We also have a specific training about those money rules too. So if you're looking to handle money, or you know somebody that's going to handle money, I would highly suggest you watch that training and read through the different rules there are about handling finances. We also have specific policies about communicating with 4-H members. And a lot of that is for your safety. So if you choose to text a 4-H member, you actually need to text a group text with at least 1 adult included with that text. So I would text at least the kid and their parent, or you could text 5 kids and have at least 1 parent extra within that communication. That would be the same if you're using Facebook or other communication methods, email. That's why a lot of 4-H groups have gone to using Band or Remind, because it is a group chat option, and so you're not having that one-on-one communication. And most of that happens because of the fact that sometimes communication can be misstrued. And so in turn, you may be saying one thing and a child might be reading something else, and a parent may see that as being inappropriate. So you just want to cover your bases and make sure that you're communicating with more than 1 person. And we do have specific policies you can read about communication. Also, if you're a shooting sports or horse leader, there are other specific rules that you have to follow. A lot of that has to do with horse safety and shooting sports leader certification. Does anybody have any specific questions about a rule or something that was brought up related to rules that might be confusing? Because I know sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming, especially if it's something we haven't thought about practicing before. As always, you can put them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and let me know what kind of things I can clarify for you. In addition to our 4-H policies, the other thing that we really want to be part of every 4-H experience is positive youth development. Volunteers should be aware of positive youth development concepts and work to incorporate into their 4-H experiences. So if you are a new or newer leader, hopefully you've taken the online volunteer training that covers some of those concepts. And I'm going to really just highlight a couple of ones that I think are really important through this training. I won't go through all of them. So some of the ones that we talk about a lot, or that you may have heard your 4-H educator talking about, is our newest research is called the thriving method, or helping youth thrive. And I'll show you what that one looks like because it's pretty new. We also talk a lot about ages and stages of youth development. So that's saying that when a young person is 8 years old, here's some characteristics that are pretty similar to all 8-year-olds. And there are some handouts that you can ask your 4-H educator or myself for that can tell you. We also talk a lot about essential elements, and you may have heard what those are. That's the idea of belonging, mastery, generosity, and independence. So helping create opportunities for young people to belong, opportunities in the work you do to help young people be more independent, opportunities to master a skill, and opportunities to give back to their community. We also talk about the experiential learning model, and I'm just going to show you that one during this training too. And then also the life skill development, which is talking about using project-based learning to teach life skills like responsibility, teamwork, patience, resilience, and we have a training about that. And then also the last one that you may not have heard of, that's kind of one we don't cover very well, is the 4-H recognition model. And there is another training that you can watch if you want to, that we've done in the past, about how to make sure that you're offering recognition at all levels, not just competitive recognition within the 4-H program. So that means recognition for just being engaged in the program is also important for some kids. So here's the Thrive model that I was telling you that I would show you. So the idea is that down here in the soil where this flower is planted, we offer 4-H programs. This would be like things you're in charge of: 4-H clubs, shooting sports programs, community service, maybe the carnival, whatever it is, the 4-H things that are activities and workshops that are offered within your county is this soil that we are going to build amazing young people off of. The amazing young people are this flower. And so we're hoping that when you think about offering programs, you think about what kind of sparks or what kind of interests might you be able to address as part of young people wanting to be engaged in your program. How do you make them feel like they belong and provide a safe environment for them? How do you offer opportunities for them to develop relationships with each other and with caring adults? And how do we keep them engaged, maybe in that planning and also implementation of our 4-H program? So think about the fact that we talked about in clubs, we want young people leading those clubs. That means that they're engaged because they're actually thinking about what that looks like. This is where things get a little bit more confusing. The goal is that if you have a strong 4-H program, or strong soil in this case, that you're able to grow a young person that thrives. And thriving, and we're going to try to do some more trainings about this for our volunteers and our staff. But the idea is that there are 7 thriving principles, and they're listed here on the right-hand side. You can Google this also, or if you're really interested in this, I'd be more than willing to talk with you or provide you some additional resources. But the idea is that youth who thrive have a growth mindset. And that sounds some of these words sound very complicated, but really it's just saying that 4-H opportunities are ways for youth to grow, and they see them as growing opportunities instead of seeing them as negative challenges. Second, they're open to challenge and to discover new things, which is something I think we naturally do as 4-H leaders. That youth have a hopeful purpose, or they see themselves as excited for their future. And so thinking about, like, what kind of career might you have as part of this project, or what kind of things might we do in the future that are related to things you're doing here in 4-H. This next one, it sounds very confusing, but it's not. The idea of pro-social orientation. That means young people are responsible and respectful. So once again, those life skills that we try to teach in most of the things we do. Here's another one that sounds very confusing: transcendent awareness. And that just means that young people are engaged in knowing they're part of a bigger picture. And a great way for us to think about that is community service, helping others and being aware that when we help others, it also helps us. Youth handle their emotions positively, even if they're big emotions or negative emotions, that they handle them in a positive way. And then also that youth have the opportunity to goal set and manage their experience. And so we do that too with our record books and the things that we're doing. And then the thought is that if youth have these thriving experiences, then they will produce these leaves of having personal standards, being socially aware, having great academics. And then long term, the 4-H program and you as leaders will produce youth who are academically successful, engaged civically, employable, and happy. So if you hear about the thriving model, this is what it looks like. And once again, if this is something you're super interested in, I would love to share more information, and we're going to try to keep training our volunteers and our staff on the thriving model. It is pretty new research. The other one I said I was going to talk about is the experiential learning model, and you may have heard it as the do, reflect, apply model. So the do idea is that you do something in 4-H, like you do a skill, and then you reflect on it. You think about what did I just do, and what kind of things went well, what kind of things didn't, and then you work to help kids apply this to life or make connections to a different point in their life. So it's really just about asking questions, and there are actually specific questions that are written out that, once again, I'd be willing to share with you, or you can find them in another PowerPoint that we've done. But that idea of doing something, reflecting on it, and helping them apply it to life. Somebody just asked in the chat if you can get a copy of the PowerPoint. The great news is I post all of my PowerPoints online, and I can show you where those are in the volunteer section. So it should be posted by the end of the week, where you can take this PowerPoint and manipulate it and use it with other leaders or other people if you want to. I also post my recording, so if you want to see the things I said, you can take those too. So yes. So now that's kind of the PYD basics, and we looked at a couple of the models that maybe are the most important to think about. Now you're thinking, okay, most of you are already volunteers, but you thought about a person in your life who might be great at being an activity leader, or a person that you know who will be really good at being a committee member in your county. So what does it take, again, for a 4-H person to be a volunteer, and how do you engage them? Maybe you've been doing it for so long that it's old hat to you. But the first thing that they will need to do is enroll in Z Suite. That starts the process for everything. So if your family's already enrolled in Z Suite and you want to add yourself as a leader, or you want to help the other person add themselves as a leader, they would need to create a Z Suite profile. And then the next thing that a certified volunteer does is they complete a background check. The background check comes from a company called Verified Volunteers, sometimes called Sterling, but it's what we use at the university to do all of our background checks. So they'll send you a specific email. Please note that you can opt out of paying for your own background check. Sometimes people don't understand that part and they just pay for it anyway. So we appreciate your donation, but there is a place to opt out because the university will pay for that background check. The other thing you're going to do as a volunteer is engage with your 4-H educator, kind of do that job interview thing that we talked about at the beginning of the thing. Ask questions about how you could engage in things that you would be good at and things that they could see you helping with. You might have to take an MVR training, which stands for motor vehicle record training. So if you're one of the people who is willing to drive kids, you'll need to take the MVR. I highly suggest everybody takes the MVR, even if you don't think you're going to drive kids. And if you don't pass it, that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. However, how often does it happen where there's that one kid left and they need a ride home? Or there's that one kid who wants to come with your kid and go to an event? If you have the MVR training, then our supplemental insurance will cover something if something would happen. Obviously, it doesn't replace your auto insurance. It doesn't replace your medical insurance, but it gives you some additional coverage that you could help with if something does happen. And then you just work with kids. Simple as that, right? Very, very simple. So our goal is that you can help us to share the message of the different roles that you can play in 4-H, and we can get additional people enrolled in this training or in our program. So now you're thinking, oh my goodness, you told me about all this stuff. I can't do this alone. Well, the great news is we do have resources already established that can help you in being a volunteer. Once again, I talked about the fact that we have curriculum for every single project, and almost every one of your counties has one copy of all the curriculum that's available. So you can go to your 4-H educator and say, hey, listen, I have a kid who's super interested in foods. I don't know anything about cooking. Can you please share the curriculum with me? And not all of it is about actually making food. Some of it is about nutrition and measuring, and it'll walk you through the steps to help that young person learn about that project. We also on our 4-H website have an events and opportunities page, and we have fact sheets for every project. I'm going to try to show you those when we're done so you can see what they look like, but the fact sheets offer opportunities for tours and projects and things you can do that you may have never thought about. You can talk to your 4-H educator specifically if you need a space to meet. They could provide you with that. maybe you need some money to get started. Most of our counties, in fact, all of them, have some type of budget, and maybe they should be able to help you with some money to actually get started with some of the project work, especially if you're offering it at this county-wide level. They also might have stuff or tangibles like robots or drones or other things that you can use to actually get started. There's also lots of different trainings you can take. This is an example of one of them, but we do or can offer project-specific training or other specific training that you might want to know more about. You just need to ask or tell us that you want those things, because we may not know that there's a need, but we can work to develop something if we know there's a need in the state. Also, be super honest with me or with your 4-H educator about what you need, no matter how big it's or small it is. A lot of times, if you don't ask, we don't even know it's something that you're looking for, and it may exist in other areas of the state. Other people may have done something similar, or we may be able to find the funds to help you get to whatever your goals are. So just be super open and honest with your 4-H educator, or you can always contact me and I can help you to see if we can offer some of the things that you might be looking for. So in conclusion, you don't need a specific project skill to be a project leader. You really just need a willingness to do it. And I think that's a great message to share with other people in your life too. There's some way for everyone to help. So even if you're just really good at organizing, but you don't want to do anything else, we can find a job for you within the 4-H program. We do have job descriptions that kind of go more in depth with what I covered. I can show you where those are on our website if you want to look at those also. Be sure to ask questions, just like a job interview, of your 4-H educator and your 4-H program, to see if there's things that you might be able to do or that might make more sense for you to engage in. Be sure you have a basic understanding of the Wyoming 4-H policies and are able to look through those, especially if there's something specific that relates to a job you're doing. Try to include positive youth development in the work that you do, and please, 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 please ask for help. Okay, so feel free to ask questions, but I also want to show you some of the resources I talked about so you know where to find them on our website. So I'm going to stop the share. Also, if you haven't yet, add your name and your county to the chat. So that way I can make sure to give you credit for attending today's session. And that just means that that 5-year leader training is covered. And so I will add that even if you're not up for a 5-year leader training, if we put it in, it helps you to know that you have taken some type of training. Our 4-H website, I'm going to pull it up here and then I'll share my screen again. And if you don't want to stay to watch this part, you don't have. But a couple of things that I can show you. Let's see, share screen. Okay, so I did a Google search about 4-H logic models and growth mindset. So you see that there's this entire website about the 4-H thriving model. So you are more than welcome to use this. It's pretty new, so not a lot of research is out there, but it also goes through all of the different thriving indicators and talks about what that looks like within a 4-H program. And there are some videos that you are more than welcome to watch. So I just want to let you know that that does exist out there if you're looking to find out more about that thriving model. So then I just do a search for 4-H. Sadly, that's even how we find it at the state office, is I just do a Google search. I don't even have this web page marked. So here's the website I was talking about. If you go here to current members, you'll see that's where our policies and best practices exist. So if you're looking for the 4-H policies that you want to read, those are going to be here. And then I'm going to go back here. And the other one that I think is good to check out is this idea of volunteers. And so here are the roles. Those are the specific job duties that we already talked about, and you can go and look at each one of them, or you could print those off if you're wanting to share them with somebody you think might be good at that different job description. Additionally, there are additional trainings. Talks a lot about things that you might want to learn more about. So the chaperone training is here on the top. If you're going to be overnight chaperone, you can take that quiz or just take it. It's a one and done. So if you're even thinking about being a chaperone, you can go up there and take that quiz. And here's are some of the trainings that I've created that you could go look at. Once again, I do post all my PowerPoint slides, so you're free to use those within your 4-H club, or maybe you could ask your 4-H educator to do a specific one for your county or club. So there's one on working on a board or committee. So if that's a role you think someone might want to take, there's something you can share with them in order for them to know what their experience might look like. couple other ones we talked about is the 4-H recognition model. So that's here, that you can learn about what that looks like and how you can provide recognition and appreciation opportunities in your club. And then I think there was one more that I talked about. So we also talked about supporting with curriculum. So that'll talk a little about the curriculum opportunity. And if you're looking for more about like the PYD experiences, those are going to be in the new leader training. And that's also a tab that you can find here, that new volunteers. The last thing we talked about is how you find resources for projects. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of our page, these are going to be things that are happening most recently, so you can look for those, but on the bottom are all of our projects. So no matter what project you might want to help with, you can click on it and the project will appear here. So for instance, let's look at what cake decorating looks like. So it'll go to the cake decorating page. There will be a cake decorating, there will be some type of thing here about the project curriculum. We actually have our own cake decorating manual that you can use, and that's right there. And this is the fact sheet I was talking about. So what that looks like for every single project that we have, when it pops up, is that it'll talk to you about what happens in year 1, what happens in year like 2, 3, and what happens as you get older. And then the second page will talk about how can you take it further? So these might be like tours or different things you can do in your community to really think about how you can take your experience beyond the curriculum we offered. So an example here might be that you go to a wedding cake consultation. So find a local person who does wedding cakes and ask them the kind of questions they ask the bride or groom or things that they do when they have a wedding cake consultation. Maybe you're just going to go to a bakery and see what kind of things they're doing there. Or maybe you're just going to create a drawing or decoration ideas to use as inspiration. You could even turn that in as a 4-H project. And here's the exhibit ideas that you can do within your project. So if they're looking to do something besides just enter a cake, here's some additional things that they might want to do as an exhibit for the fair. And then each one also has 3 sections, one on how you can enhance communication as part of your 4-H project experience, how you can do more citizenship or that giving back generosity opportunity, and then how you maybe can demonstrate leadership in your 4-H project. So every single one of our projects has a guide sheet like this with all of the same type of information on it. So if you have a person who might want to help with a project, or you're really struggling to know how to get young people engaged, this is a great way to be able to share that information with them. All right, that's all I have. I really want to appreciate all of you for joining me, and I'm still here if you'd like to ask questions. I'm going to write down everybody's name. But once again, the PowerPoint will be posted at the end of the week, and if there's specific things you'd love to know more about, I am more than willing to share those things with you and would love to talk to you more about specifics that maybe you would like more information on or need more resources for. I'm going to stop recording.